This topic that we're talking about today is about sexual abuse. I am saddened and horrified at the number of occasions where I teach a workshop, like a meditation retreat or a therapy retreat, and very often in the one-to-one interviews that we often have at such an event, there are an enormous number of participants who tell me that when they were children, they were sexually abused. And a lot of these folks do well in their life, and they go on, and things are below the surface, but not hauntingly interrupting their lives. But when we go to a meditation retreat or we do anything where we have quiet time, it's not surprising at all that the thing that most comes up is the incidences of pain and trauma that are always just underneath the surface. So many people have been abused, often by a family member or a family friend, sexually molested or inappropriately touched. And I would even say that abuse is when people that should not violate a child's boundaries do so by innuendo, and do so by jokes, and do so by teasing, or even do so by inappropriate dress or inappropriate exposing of themselves by states of undress, or by looking at inappropriate sexualized material with a child, or even with the child's knowing that they're doing things that for a child are frightening and offensive. All of these ways of not honoring that a child needs an adult to keep them safe and protect them, to honor their innocence and to honor the sanctity of their bodies. Anything other than that, when it's sexualized, makes the child in some way a sexual object and takes from them their dignity, their honor, and is treating them in a way that robs them of a sense of safety and invites them to feel shame because they're less than a human being in that person's eyes at that point. So often the conflict comes because in other ways the parent or the adult in their life loves them or maybe treats them well, and children get very, very confused and conflicted messages about how to have a relationship with this person. Some of you who have been in these circumstances may find that your whole attitude about your own sexuality gets distorted in some ways. You don't know how to be a healthy sexual being when such trauma has gone on in your life. Another event that often happens for many, and which is very horrifying, is that one who has been abused as a child often becomes an abuser. And in our identity with a person who victimizes us, instead of that horrific identity of being the one who's victimized, unconsciously we switch places and we decide that safety comes from being the the one with power, and that's the abuser. So many children who have been sexually abused, even then as 9 or 10 or 11-year-olds, they start looking at younger children as possible victims to their own need to exert power over someone else. Many children become abusers as teenagers, especially boys are more likely to become the abusers. And of course, this brings us back full circle, because the likelihood that your abuser was actually abused in their own life, in their own childhood, is probably a pretty great reality. And so we see down through the ages the long, long lineage, this trail of abuse that has been part of human illness for a long, long time. So what do we do when we have lived a life that has had such a great wound in it and has in many ways shamed us in a deep way and warped our sense of who we are, and especially what our bodies are? The most important thing is to start getting all of that pain and trauma and shame up to the surface of our awareness. There are many ways that our cells will carry a deep memory of the trauma and the abuse and the shame that may never ever leave us and will always surface in times of stress or fear or anxiety, almost like a flashback. But there are still many ways that we can heal. We can write about the trauma and the abuse. We can do art projects that bring all of this abuse closer to the surface. We can talk to people, and absolutely, if you are in a relationship with somebody who loves you and with whom you feel safe, tell them what happened. And if you feel as though it's important to confront your abuser, especially if you're older, then I would recommend it for your healing. The chances are great that it will not go over well, but maybe you'll have that rare experience of an apology. Mostly consider what you need for your own healing, and take your time, go slowly, and never ever blame yourself for what happened.